On April 24, 2018, a 72-year-old grandfather was watering his lawn in the quiet Sacramento suburb of Citrus Heights. He wore reading glasses and a cardigan. His neighbors described him as reclusive but harmless, just another retiree living out his golden years. When police cars swarmed his property, guns drawn, the old man seemed confused, almost innocent. But Joseph James DeAngelo was neither confused nor innocent. He was the Golden State Killer, the most prolific uncaught serial killer and rapist in American history. For 44 years, he had lived freely, hidden in plain sight, while 51 women carried the trauma of his rapes, while families of 13 murder victims waited for justice, while entire communities lived in fear of the monster who came in the night. But here's the twist that makes your blood run cold. He wasn't just any criminal. He was a cop. He knew exactly how to evade capture because he'd been trained to catch people like himself. And he almost got away with it forever. Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. was born on November 8, 1945, in Bath, New York. To everyone who knew him, he seemed destined for a respectable life. He served in the U.S. Navy during Vietnam. He went to college and graduated with honors in police science in 1970. He got engaged to a woman he met at Sierra College. And then something changed. His fiancée called off their engagement in 1971. She later described him as becoming manipulative and abusive. She said he exhibited rage she'd never seen before, a darkness that terrified her. 1 year later, in 1973, DeAngelo married someone else. They had 3 daughters. From the outside, it looked like a normal family. But during his wedding year, DeAngelo also became something else, a police officer. From 1973 to 1976, he served in Exeter, California. From 1976 to 1979, he worked in Auburn. He learned crime scene investigation, evidence collection, how to avoid leaving traces, how police thought, how they hunted criminals. He was learning how not to get caught. And in 1974, while wearing a badge during the day, he began his reign of terror at night. It started with burglaries. Over 120 of them in Visalia, California. The Ransacker would enter homes, rifle through belongings, steal small items, and leave. Sometimes he'd rearrange furniture or leave strange trophies behind, women's underwear, photographs, personal items that had no monetary value. Police were baffled. This wasn't about money. It was about power, control, violation. Then, on September 11, 1975, the Ransacker escalated. Professor Claude Snelling heard a noise outside his Visalia home at 2 a.m. When he went to investigate, he found a masked man attempting to kidnap his 16-year-old daughter. Snelling confronted the intruder. The masked man shot him dead. Then he kicked the daughter, a child, 3 times in the face before fleeing into the darkness. That masked man was Officer Joseph DeAngelo. And he was just getting started. The attacks moved north to Sacramento County. The pattern changed from burglary to something far more sinister, rape. His methodology was terrifyingly consistent. He prowled suburban neighborhoods at night. He targeted single women or couples in their homes. He entered through unlocked doors or windows, often ones he'd unlocked during earlier reconnaissance burglaries. He wore a ski mask. He carried a flashlight and a gun. If attacking a couple, he'd tie up the male victim, stack dishes on his back, and threaten, "If I hear those dishes fall, I'll kill you both." Then he'd spend hours in the home, eating their food, drinking their beer, raping the female victim multiple times, ransacking drawers, stealing valuables and photos. The terror wasn't just the assault, it was the psychological torture. The victims were paralyzed with fear, listening to dishes balanced on their partner's back, knowing that one wrong move meant death. From 1976 to 1979, he committed at least 51 rapes in the Sacramento area. And all the while, he was Officer DeAngelo, attending crime scenes, probably even investigating some of his own attacks. In 1979, something changed again. The East Area Rapist seemed to vanish from Sacramento. But 300 miles south, in Santa Barbara and Orange County, a new predator emerged, the original Night Stalker. He attacked couples in their homes, but now, he was killing them. His first known murders, Brian and Katie Majori, shot dead in Rancho Cordova after possibly witnessing him breaking into a home. From 1979 to 1986, he murdered at least 10 more people across Southern California. Lyman and Charlene Smith, bludgeoned to death with a log from their fireplace. Keith and Patrice Harrington, beaten to death in their bed. Manuela Withune, raped and bludgeoned while home alone. Sherry Domingo and Gregory Sanchez, bludgeoned with a blunt object. Janelle Cruz, just 18 years old, raped and beaten to death in her family home. The brutality escalated with each attack. He was becoming more violent, more sadistic, more confident that he'd never be caught. And then, in 1986, after the murder of Janelle Cruz, he simply stopped. By 1986, Joseph DeAngelo's life was changing. He was arrested that year for shoplifting, stealing a hammer and dog repellent. It seemed absurd. A petty crime committed by a man responsible for decades of terror. He lost his job as an Auburn police officer because of the theft. But he didn't go to prison. He wasn't connected to any of the major crimes. He simply moved on with his life. His wife left him in 1991. They remained estranged but never officially divorced. From 1990 until 2017, DeAngelo worked as a truck mechanic at a supermarket distribution center in Roseville. He was described by coworkers as competent but antisocial. He lived in Citrus Heights, the exact same neighborhood where he'd raped his first known victim in June 1976. He was living at the scene of his crimes. His neighbors barely knew him. He kept to himself. He had 3 adult daughters who visited occasionally. He was a grandfather. Just another old man in suburbia. Meanwhile, cold case detectives across California were desperately trying to connect crimes that seemed unrelated. For decades, investigators didn't realize the Visalia Ransacker, the East Area Rapist, and the original Night Stalker were all the same person. In the early 2000s, everything changed. DNA technology had advanced enough to extract usable samples from old evidence. Investigators tested DNA from the East Area Rapist cases and from the original Night Stalker murders. They matched. The East Area Rapist and the original Night Stalker were the same person. Someone who had terrorized California for over a decade, committing 13 murders, 51 rapes, and 120 burglaries, was still out there. The FBI increased the reward to $50,000. They released new composite sketches. They created a national database to handle tips. But leads went nowhere. The killer seemed to have vanished. Then, in December 2017, a retired investigator named Paul Holes tried something revolutionary. Paul Holes had worked the Golden State Killer case for nearly 25 years. He was retiring, and this was his last shot. He and FBI lawyer Steve Kramer decided to try an experimental technique, genetic genealogy. They uploaded the killer's DNA profile, extracted from a 1980 rape kit from the Lyman and Charlene Smith murder, to GEDmatch, a public genealogy website where people upload their DNA to find relatives. The killer's DNA didn't match anyone in the database. But it matched distant relatives, people who shared the same great-great-great-grandparents as the killer. Working with genealogist Barbara Raventer, a team of 5 investigators constructed massive family trees. They identified 10 to 20 people who could be related to the Golden State Killer. From December 2017 to April 2018, they painstakingly built out these family trees, generation by generation, until they narrowed it down to 2 suspects. One was ruled out by a relative's DNA test. The other was Joseph James DeAngelo. On April 18, 2018, investigators made their move. Detectives began surveilling DeAngelo. They watched him shop at a Hobby Lobby. They watched him water his lawn. They watched him take out his trash. And when he drove away, they collected evidence from his car door handle and from a tissue in his curbside garbage can. Both DNA samples matched the Golden State Killer's DNA from crime scenes. They had him. On April 24, 2018, National DNA Day, police arrested 72-year-old Joseph James DeAngelo at his Citrus Heights home. Sacramento District Attorney Anne-Marie Schubert announced at a press conference, "We found the needle in the haystack, and it was right here in Sacramento." But perhaps the most chilling moment came after his arrest. After DeAngelo was taken into custody, he was left alone in an interview room. He didn't know he was being recorded. He spoke to himself, and what he said froze everyone who heard it. "I did all those things. I destroyed all those lives." It was the closest thing to a confession he would ever give. Prosecutors charged him with 13 counts of murder, 13 counts of kidnapping, and multiple uncharged acts including 51 rapes. The statute of limitations had expired on the rapes, but prosecutors detailed them in horrific specificity as part of the plea deal. DeAngelo faced the death penalty. But on June 29, 2020, he accepted a plea deal, life in prison without the possibility of parole in exchange for admitting to all his crimes. And then came the sentencing hearings, 3 days that would haunt everyone in that courtroom. For 3 days, DeAngelo sat in a wheelchair, covered by a white face mask, as survivor after survivor, and the relatives of those he murdered, stood before him and spoke. Jane Carson Sandler, raped in 1976 while her young son was in the house. "I was frozen in fear beyond description. My attention was not on the rape, but fully on where did you put my son when you removed him from the bed? Where did you put him and what were you going to do to him?" Seeing a ski mask or hearing someone yell, "Shut up," will forever cause me anxiety. My comfort at those times is remembering that you are finally going to prison and will remain there until you die. Bruce Harrington, whose brother Keith and sister-in-law Patrice were bludgeoned to death in 1980. I began my quest in the mid-90s. It was 15 years until we heard that there was a DNA sample taken from our scene. I testified in front of the California Assembly, pleading that they would embrace the power of DNA. For 44 years, families like Bruce Harrington's had fought for this moment. Survivor after survivor told stories of fear, grief, and resilience. They described decades of nightmares, broken marriages, lost careers, children who grew up with traumatized parents. They described the weight of living in fear that he'd come back. On August 21, 2020, it was DeAngelo's turn to speak. For the first time since his arrest, DeAngelo rose from his wheelchair. He removed his face mask. He spoke clearly. "I've listened to all your statements. Each one of them. And I'm truly sorry to everyone I have hurt. Thank you, Your Honor." The words rang hollow. After 44 years of silence. After decades of freedom while his victims suffered. After living peacefully as a grandfather in the same neighborhood where his terror began. "I'm truly sorry" didn't come close. The judge sentenced him to life without parole, 11 consecutive life sentences plus 15 years to life, ensuring he would die in prison. Joseph James DeAngelo is currently incarcerated at California State Prison, Corcoran. He will never leave. DeAngelo's capture represents one of the most significant breakthroughs in criminal justice history. Here's what made it possible. One of the principal factors that unmasked this criminal is DNA preservation. Evidence collected in the 1970s and 1980s, when DNA technology didn't exist, was carefully preserved. Decades later, it became the key to solving the case. Again, genetic genealogy. DeAngelo became the first public arrest obtained through genetic genealogy, a technique that matches crime scene DNA with profiles on public genealogy databases to trace family trees. Since DeAngelo's arrest, over 150 suspects have been identified through genetic genealogy. Also, persistent investigators. Investigator Paul Hull spent nearly 25 years on this case. His refusal to give up, even into retirement, led to the breakthrough. In addition, cross-jurisdictional cooperation. The Golden State Killer's crimes spanned 10 counties across California. For decades, different jurisdictions didn't connect the cases. Finally, sharing information and DNA samples cracked the case. More so, victim advocacy. Bruce Harrington testified before the California Assembly in the early 2000s, advocating for expanded DNA collection and pleading with lawmakers to embrace the power of DNA. His advocacy helped create the legal framework that eventually caught his brother's killer. The Golden State Killer's tactics reveal critical vulnerabilities in home security. Here's how to protect yourself. First, lock everything, every time. 39.5% of burglars gain access through unlocked doors or windows. DeAngelo often entered through windows or doors that victims thought they'd locked, but he'd unlocked them during earlier prowling sessions. Action steps. Lock your doors and windows every time, even if you're just stepping next door. Install deadbolt locks. They're more secure than standard doorknob locks. Use pin locks on double-hung windows. Install blocking bars in sliding glass door tracks. Second, eliminate hiding spots. DeAngelo often hid in bushes or dark corners while stalking homes. Action steps. Cut back growth from windows to eliminate hiding places and don't obscure the front door with heavy landscaping. Install motion-activated lighting outdoors to shine a light on potential intruders. Have exterior lighting on a timer or motion-activated, and interior lighting on timers to make it look like someone is home. Third, fortify entry points. Research shows that if it takes a thief more than 4 or 5 minutes to break into a home, they will go elsewhere. Action steps. Install door armor hardware on doors and jambs. It uses 16-gauge galvanized steel and installs in less than 30 minutes. Outside doors should be metal or solid hardwood, at least 1 3/4 inches thick, with door frames made of equally strong material. Install peepholes or wide-angle viewers indoors. Replace any rotted door or window frames immediately. Fourth, install a monitored security system. Burglars are more likely to abort their mission when signs of a security system are seen, and a triggered system sounds a blaring siren which isn't to the burglar's advantage. Action steps. Install a home security system with cameras and video doorbells. Choose professional monitoring for 24/7 protection. Install security signs and stickers to deter intruders. Integrate smart home automation to control lights, locks, and cameras remotely. Fifth, don't advertise your absence. DeAngelo often prowled neighborhoods for weeks, identifying which homes were vacant during the day. Action steps. Use home automation to schedule smart lights and TVs to turn on at night and off during the day when you're away. Don't announce vacations on social media until after you return. Notify police and request vacation patrol checks when away. Have mail and newspapers stopped or collected. Disconnect electric garage door openers and padlock the door from inside. 6th, create layers of security. No single measure stops a determined criminal. Multiple layers make your home too difficult to target. Action steps: combine locks, lights, alarms, cameras, and landscaping. Consider time, sound, and visibility as 3 main factors. Burglars want to work quickly, quietly, and unseen. Install gun safes if you own firearms. Around 230,000 guns are stolen during household burglaries every year. Keep valuables out of sight from windows. 7th, be a vigilant neighbor. DeAngelo prowled neighborhoods repeatedly. Someone might have noticed, but they didn't report it. Action steps: report suspicious activity to local police immediately. Get to know your neighbors and watch out for each other. If you see someone casing homes or trying doors, windows, call 911. Join or create a neighborhood watch program. 8. Preserve evidence. If you are victimized, evidence preservation can lead to justice, even decades later. Action steps: don't touch anything. If you come home to a burglary, call police immediately. If attacked, preserve clothing, bedding, and any other evidence. Even if you don't report immediately, you can later photograph valuables and keep serial numbers in a secure location. Consider DNA marking valuable items with identification kits. The Golden State Killer case resonates globally because it exposes vulnerabilities that exist in every developed nation. In the United States, there are over 250,000 unsolved murder cases nationwide as of 2024, one of the largest unresolved case backlogs in the world. Philadelphia police are solving homicides at the highest rate since 1984, with clearance rates between 86 to 91% in 2025, dramatically up from around 50% or less from 2015. 2022 advanced technology and persistent investigation are finally bringing justice. In the United Kingdom, thousands of unsolved homicides remain, with active cold case units in major police forces. Similar genetic genealogy techniques are being adopted to solve decades-old cases. Home security principles are identical: locks, lights, alarms, and vigilance. In Canada, Toronto Police Service reports indicate a 12% increase in residential break-ins in 2025 across specific GTA neighborhoods. Vancouver's Strathcona area had a 43% increase in 2025 compared to 2024, and specific Montreal areas have experienced increases, prompting police advisories. The need for robust home security is more urgent than ever. The universal truth remains that serial offenders often escalate over time, starting with minor crimes and building to major violence. Early intervention, evidence preservation, and community vigilance can stop them before they destroy more lives. Now the big question to you: how can you help solve cold cases? The Golden State Killer was caught because someone uploaded their DNA to a genealogy database. Evidence was preserved for 40+ years. Investigators never gave up. Technology advanced enough to make connections. You can contribute to solving cold cases. Upload your DNA to GED Match or similar databases, with privacy settings allowing law enforcement access. If you're comfortable with that, report suspicious activity immediately. Don't assume someone else will call. Advocate for cold case units and adequate funding for DNA testing. Support organizations like the DNA Doe Project, which uses genetic genealogy to identify unknown victims. Share information about unsolved cases responsibly on social media. For 44 years, Joseph James DeAngelo lived free while his victims carried the weight of his crimes every single day. Every time they heard a noise at night, every time they saw a ski mask, every time their children asked why mommy had nightmares, every time they had to explain to romantic partners why intimacy was difficult, every time they moved to a new home hoping to feel safe again, the Golden State Killer stole more than lives and physical safety. He stole peace of mind. He stole trust. He stole decades of happiness. But on April 24, 2018, that shadow began to lift. Justice came late, but it came. Jane Carson Sandler, one of his rape victims, said at his sentencing, "My comfort at those times is remembering that you are finally going to prison and will remain there until you die." Joseph James DeAngelo will die in prison. His victims have reclaimed their power. This case proves three things. Number 1. Justice is patient but persistent, even 44 years isn't too long. Number 2. Technology changes everything. What was unsolvable yesterday becomes solvable today. Number 3. Evil doesn't win forever. No matter how smart, how careful, how protected by time, criminals can be caught. To anyone suffering in silence from an unsolved crime, your case is not forgotten. Somewhere, an investigator like Paul Holes is refusing to give up. Somewhere, technology is advancing that will crack your case. Somewhere, a family member like Bruce Harrington is advocating for justice. 5 cold cases were solved in 2024 using DNA and genetic genealogy technologies that didn't exist when the crimes occurred. More cases are being solved every year. The needle will be found in the haystack. Remember the victims. Secure your home. Report suspicious activity. Never give up on justice. Joseph James DeAngelo, 13 murders, 51 rapes, 120 burglaries. Caught. Convicted. Imprisoned for life. Justice, delayed but delivered. Injustice ignored doesn't vanish, it multiplies. Subscribe to Shadowlens so these stories aren't buried. If you're already with us, you're not just watching, you're one of the unwavering voices pushing the world toward truth.